Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we'll be reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 10, entitled Departure of Lord Krishna for Dwarka. Text 27. Aho bata swar yasasastiraskari kushashtali punya yashashkari bhuva pasyanti nityam yad anugrahishitam smrita valokam swapatim smayat praja. Aho bata swar yasasastiraskari kushashtali punya yashashkari bhuva pasyanti nityam yaduna yanugrahisitam smita valokam swapatim smayat praja. Aho bata swar yasasastiraskari kushat halit punya yasaskari bhuva pasyanti nityam yadanugrahishitam smita valokam swapatim smayat praja. Please chant. Aho bata swar yasasastiraskari kushashtali punyam yasaskari bhuva pasyanti nityam yadanugraheshitam smita valokam swapatim smaya pudraja. Aho bata swar yasasastiraskari kushashtali punya yashashkari bhuva pasyanti nityam yadunugrahashitam smita valokam sapatim smaya praja. Mothers. Aho bata swar yasasastiraskari kushashtali punya yashashkari bhuva pasyanti nityam yadunagraheshitam smita valokam swapatim smayat praja. Word for word. Aho bata. How wonderful is this? Swa yashasha. The glories of the heavenly planets. Tiraskari. That which defeats. Kushashtali. Dwarka. Punya. Virtue. Yashashkari, famous. Bhuvaha, the planet Earth. Pasyanti, see. Nityam, constantly. Yat, that which. Anugrahasitam, to bestow benediction. Smitavalokam, glance with the favor of sweet smiling. Swapatim, onto the soul of the living being Krishna. Sma, used to. Yat prajaha, the inhabitants of the place. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Translation: undoubtedly, it is wonderful that Dwarka has defeated the glories of the heavenly planets and has enhanced the celebrity of the earth. The inhabitants of Dwarka are always seeing the soul of all living beings, Krishna, in his loving feature. He glances at them and favors them with sweet smiles. So, actually, when I look at this verse, something came to mind before I go to the purport. Some of you may know who Sali Agarwal is, and for those who don't, Sali Agarwal is the person in whose home Srila Prabhupada first stayed when he came to the West, in Butler, Pennsylvania. And as far as I know, she wasn't a devotee. I'm not sure if anyone knows anything different.
She was not.
She was not a devotee.
Correct.
But she captured something very distinctly about Srila Prabhupada, about his smile. Does anyone know what she...
Ocean.
She said his smile was very oceanic. So his smile was so captivating that it's very oceanic, that it captures anyone pretty much who gets in touch with him. So it's not an understatement to say that Srila Prabhupada is just a representative of the Lord, but in quote unquote, for comparison, imagine what Krishna's smile can be like. Even in one of our classes lately, we discussed when Queen Kunti was praising Krishna. He just stood there listening. That's the prayers of Queen Kunti. And all he did was he smiled at her at the end. And it says that smile was more enchanting than the Vedic scriptures. It was more enchanting than all the Vedas put together. It was more captivating. So, anyway, just that thought came to mind. So, purport. And I'll probably, because it's a long purport, I may go bits and pieces. The heavenly planets are inhabited by demigods like Indra, Chandra, Varuna, and Vayu. And the pious souls reach there after performance of many virtuous acts on earth. Modern scientists agree that the timing arrangement in higher planetary systems is different from that of the earth. Thus, it is understood from the revealed scriptures that the duration of life there is 10,000 years by our calculation. 6 months on earth is equal to 1 day on the heavenly planets. Facilities of enjoyment are also similarly enhanced, and the beauty of the inhabitants is legendary. Common men on earth are very much fond of reaching the heavenly planets because they have heard that comforts of life are far greater there than on earth. They are now trying to reach the moon by spacecraft. Considering all this, the heavenly planets are more celebrated than the earth. So I'll stop there for a moment. Om Gyan Timrandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshunamitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Shri Prabhupada Namah Shri Shivanata Vivira Padapa Pankajadana Prabhupada Navadana Mashira Vahavi Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishna Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaura Prana Pacharani Vishesha Sunyavadi Paschati Deshikari. So, to give a little recap, to follow the trend of conversation here, this is after the Battle of Kurukshetra. Krishna was leaving for his abode, so he was there in Hastinapur. And as he was leaving, the ladies of Hastinapur were offering prayers and glorifying him. So this is part of their prayers and glorification that we are discussing here today. And Srila Prabhupada is discussing the desire that everyone has to go to the higher planetary systems. Basically, this purport, it's like an extension of Srila Prabhupada's purport that he has given in the Bhagavad Gita, 8:16, the Abrahama Bhuvanaloka verse. Except for towards the end, there's this very distinct addition, which we'll cover later. So here, Srila Prabhupada is discussing that even the material world, even the materialists, are convinced that life on the higher planetary systems are much longer and much more happiness, much more opportunities for enjoyment. So here it's described that to our calculation, life expectancy is about 10,000 years of our Earth years. And 6 months of our time here equals to only 1 day on the heavenly planets. So let me pull out my calculator here and see what that calculates to be. So if we have 10,000 years and each year represents 2 days on the heavenly planets, and multiply that by 2, that will give you 20,000 days on the heavenly planets. So divide that 20,000 days by the 365 days per year, because according to Srila Prabhupada, the years are the same. So that gives you 54.79 years of average life there. So that's even shorter on average of life in this material world, isn't it? The average lifespan here, I think, is a little more than 54 years old, probably. So from one point of view, we can say it's not a bad calculation that even if one wants to go and enjoy there, it's only 54 years. And then we can still take up our opportunities again. But from the Vaishnava perspective, there is a big risk and a big problem. And what is that risk and problem? Is that Srila Prabhupada is describing here that life on those planets are roughly 10,000 years. And so if one, let's say, goes there, perform pious activities and go there, let's say one wants to enjoy for some bit. So you go there and you spend 10,000 years, and then you try to come back here, which would, once your pious activities ends, then one returns to earth, as we would discuss. Then one may say, that's not too bad, we still have opportunities to restore or reestablish one's Krishna consciousness. But here's the problem, that according to Lord Chaitanya, this golden age only lasts for 10,000 years, of which, since Lord Chaitanya came, 535 years on average has passed. So that left with 10,000 minus 535, that's like 9,465 years. So if one goes to the heavenly planets, spend that 10,000 years and come back here, the golden age of Kali Yuga is finished. The opportunities for taking up spiritual life will be very, very slim, very dim. So it's pretty scary in that sense. So even in Krishna consciousness, we have to be very conscious that what activities we are performing. Because basically we know that according to Bhagavad Gita, that even if one can engage in full devotional service, then he can be respectful, he can be friendly, he can give donations, they can be pious, there are different stages. But there's a risk in that, that if one, let's say, try to compromise that, okay, I'll just want to be a philanthropist, then there's a risk that of sacrificing one's Krishna consciousness, and at the end of this lifetime, one is elevated to the heavenly planets because of pious activities. And when one does that, by the time you get back here to the material world, according to scripture, then Kali Yuga gets so advanced, this golden age that we are in, to be engaged in the Sankirtan movement and get this golden opportunity of enhancing our Krishna consciousness would be over with. So it's a great risk. So therefore, it is encouraged that one be very dedicated to their spiritual life and be very focused on that, because time is limited. And the opportunities of going to the higher planets is too much of a risk. So we can continue and we can understand some of the other side of this. So here we are. It says here, but the celebrity of earth has defeated that of the heavenly planets, because Dwarka, where Lord Krishna reigned, is as king. 3 places, namely Vrindavan, Mathura, and Dwarka, are more important than the famous planets within the universe. These places are perpetually sanctified, because whenever the Lord descends on earth, he displays his transcendental activities, particularly in these 3 places. They are perpetually the holy lands of the Lord, and the inhabitants still take advantage of the holy places, even though the Lord is now out of their sight. The Lord is the soul of all living beings, and he desires always to have all the living beings in their swarup, in their constitutional position, to participate in transcendental life in his association. His attractive features and sweet smiles go deep into the heart of everyone, and once it is so done, the living being is admitted into the kingdom of God, from which no one returns. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. I'll stop here again. So, in this purport, we'll find as we go through that there are 2 phrases or 2 words that Srila Prabhupada used on a few occasions, or at least on a couple of occasions. And that's famous and important. So Srila Prabhupada is describing the heavenly planets as famous, that they're very famous, even the materialists are conscious of them. Everyone wants to go to the heavenly planets. Even in many other spiritual practices, their goal, their conclusion is to go to heaven. Of course, due to lack of knowledge, they're thinking that heaven is the spiritual abode of the Lord. Or maybe there's a misconception. But the idea is to go to enjoy life there, because there's so much more enjoyment, according to Bhagavad Gita 9:20 and 21, and then also 8:16. It describes how much enjoyment are there on the heavenly planets. Life is longer. There is no old age and disease. So one can enjoy, and then at the end, one gives up their body. So unlike the material world, unlike the Earth planet, we have old age and disease. Over there's nothing like that. So there's much more opportunities for enjoyment. So the heavenly planets are famous for that. However, the earthly planet is described as important. The earthly planet is not famous by any means in comparison to these heavenly planets. Just like in the material world here on this earth planet, there are so many countries, and some countries are so famous, like the United States, for example. And some countries you don't even know that they exist. They're not famous. No. One such place is where I came from, Guyana. Guyana is not famous. Well, it is infamous because of the Jim Jones tragedy that took place there in the 1960s. But other than that, it's not famous at all. It's very small, insignificant. It's a third world country. There's so much negativity. The management is bad. Even though it has important elements, like it's the El Dorado city that Christopher Columbus discovered many years ago. And it has a world record for the world's tallest one-drop waterfall, the Kaieteur Falls. Also the record for the world's tallest wooden building, the St. George's Cathedral. And at one point, the world's longest floating bridge. So with all these little things, it was still not famous. It was still not even known. However, now it has become a very coveted country. And according to the dictionary, that means that something that is very desirable and even envious over. Why? Because they have discovered so much oil there now that the world over are looking to invest. The world over are now recognizing the importance of this little tiny insignificant country, that they want to invest, and they're becoming envious and coveted, so much so that even Venezuela has been fighting for that part of the country, both for the gold and also for the oil, since the 1980-something Geneva Agreement. So, with all, it's not famous, but it's important because of these elements as we just described. Similarly, this Earth planet is not famous, but it's important, as Srila Prabhupada described here. Why it's important? Because Krishna performed his favorite pastimes here. In these three places, Vrindavan, Mathura, and Dwarka. So, with all these disqualifications that the earthly planet has, where you have more suffering than pleasure, like it's described here, that pleasure in this world is compared to someone dipping you into the water and you're drowning, and then momentarily they would lift you up, let you get a breath of air, and then they dip you back down. So when you get up and you get a breath of fresh air, you're feeling like, oh, you're getting a relief from this suffering, and that's your enjoyment. So in this material world, the enjoyment is like that. We get some temporary, momentary relief of suffering, and we're thinking that's enjoyment. So this is the description of the earthly planet. But the beauty about it is that because the Lord has performed his pastimes here, then it becomes a very coveted place. Even the demigods are now desiring, according to Vedic scriptures, and especially Gaudiya Vaishnav Siddhanta, that even the demigods are trying to come here to the material world, just so that they can get an opportunity to engage in the devotional service of the Lord, where the distraction is not so much. Like it's described that on the heavenly planets, that there are opportunities for Krishna consciousness also, but because the distraction is so much, the enjoyment, the level of enjoyment is so much, then it's more difficult to engage in spiritual life. it's a challenge as much of a risk. I know when I grew up in Guyana, when I first joined Krishna consciousness, we heard of the four regulative principles. And on the most part, I was thinking, what's that? I'm not conscious of it because my whole life, even growing up as a karmi, was pretty much very strict like that. That's the way my parents grew me up. And in the whole society, it's like, it was a little difficult to engage in sense gratification. There are not so much opportunities. So our actual life was almost like following. Is when I moved to the United States, that's when I actually start recognizing what sense gratification really is. What is it that the Bhagavatam is talking about? What is it that Srila Prabhupada is talking about? Because initially, our daily life was almost like living following the four regulative principles. So the opportunity on earth is like that because there's so much suffering and so much disturbances that there is not a whole lot of opportunities for a whole lot of enjoyment. Therefore, it's very easy to take the spiritual life, to take the spiritual practice. So the demigods, they're recognizing that, and they're eager to come to the earthly planet, especially now so that they can engage in the Sankirtan movement. It's a very, very coveted position to be in, to be here at this time. So I would continue to finish the purport. The heavenly planets may be very famous for offering better facilities of material enjoyment. But as we learn from the Bhagavad Gita, chapters 9:20 and 9:21 verses, one has to come back again to the earth planet as soon as the acquired virtue is finished. The worker is certainly more important than the heavenly planets because whoever has been favored with the smiling glance of the Lord shall never come back again to this rotten earth. Listen to that word Srila Prabhupada used. Rotten earth. Which is certified by the Lord himself. Listen to his word again. Which is certified by the Lord himself as a place of misery. We can't get more direct than that. Not only this earth, but also all the planets of the universes are places of misery, because in none of the planets within the universe is there eternal life, eternal bliss, and eternal knowledge. Any person engaged in the devotional service of the Lord is recommended to live in one of the above mentioned three places, namely Dwarka, Mathura, and Vrindavan. Because devotional service in these three places is magnified, those who go there to follow the principles in terms of instructions imparted in the revealed scriptures surely achieve the same result as obtained during the presence of Lord Sri Krishna. His abode and he himself are identical, and a pure devotee under the guidance of another experienced devotee can obtain all the results even at presence. So here Srila Prabhupada is talking about the importance of this material world, and particularly the importance of these three places. He's directly recommending that one live in these three places. So that's all well and good. The instructions are here that one should live in Vrindavan, Mathura, or Dwarka. Except for there's a little problem. That we are here in Alachua, and how Srila Prabhupada described it, as the remote corner of the world. That's how Srila Prabhupada described Gainesville when he first came. Was that 1975, I think? He said this is like a remote corner of the world. We are here, and we have this knowledge that we should be living in Vrindavan, Mathura, or Dwarka. And all over this instruction is there. We are here, and it's all on the other side. So that's still an obstacle, that now we have knowledge that here, that's where we should live. How can we get there? We are here, we have no facilities of getting there. So if one wants to become Krishna conscious, it's recommended that you live in those places. So at the end of this purport, as I mentioned earlier, Srila Prabhupada, he added something very distinct. And that distinction is that he says here that his abode and he himself are identical. And a pure devotee, under the guidance of another experienced devotee, so that's the point, can obtain all the results even at present. So Srila Prabhupada had added this in particular, that by the guidance of an experienced devotee, translation, that basically tells you about the spiritual master. That by the guidance of the spiritual master, then all of this can be achieved. So, and in particular, Srila Prabhupada is hinting here about himself, that he became this guiding force for us. And what he did is that he brought these three holy places to us wherever we are. He brought Vrindavan, Mathura, and Dwarka all over the planet. So that's the advantage we have. We don't necessarily have to travel there. But Srila Prabhupada, by his mercy, he brought these holy places to wherever we are. Like it's described in Vrindavan that there are 5,000 temples. Now in Alachua, how many temples we have? Probably around 1,000 at this time, and in due course of time we would have so much. In every devotee's home, there's so many deities. And they are being worshipped to different extents, so those are considered temples. So how many devotees we have in this community? In short, in a short time from now, the way this community is growing, we'll probably have more temples than we have in Vrindavan. So we're going to have a bigger Vrindavan here. So how much more of a wonderful opportunity than that can we expect? So even though one may perform pious activities and one may be able to go to the higher planets, it is described that when one goes, Srila Prabhupada described this in Bhagavad Gita 8:16, that as one goes to the higher planetary system, he has to continue performing devotional service and keeps going to higher and higher. Then eventually he reaches the highest planetary system, which is Brahmalok. And if they continue performing devotional service there, then you're transferred to the spiritual world. So let's hear what Sridhar Swami has to say about that. He commented on this in his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. He gave a verse. So let's see that verse. It's here. Very sweet verse. And Srila Prabhupada quoted him. There's something very, very distinct here, very strange. Anyway, saying Baladev Vijayabhushan in his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita quotes this verse. I'm not going to read it in Sanskrit, but it says, when there is devastation of this material universe, Brahma and his devotees, who are constantly engaged in Krishna consciousness, are all transferred to the spiritual universe and to specific spiritual planets according to their desires. So, So if one doesn't continue through these different planetary systems, then they would eventually fall back to the earthly planet. That's the conclusion of the scriptures. So even there, it's not at one go and then you can stop and your credits would continue. No, you have to continue. But on the earthly planet, the opportunity is such that almost we can say that because of the lack of material facilities comparing to the heavenly planets, that the only opportunity that we really have is the opportunity to engage in Krishna consciousness, and especially in this current age, in this current golden age, this golden period of this 10,000 years. We have this special opportunity that go through your material struggles and engage in Krishna consciousness. Even Prahlad Maharaj spoke about that in the 7th canto of Bhagavatam. He directly prayed to the Lord to please give us the strength to brave the inebrities that we are facing in the material world and to engage in Krishna consciousness. Is that verse? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narashingaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Narashingaya. Namaste Jaste Jase Avir Avir Bhava. Prajanakam Rajadam Sakarma Charam. Randaya Randaya Tamo Grasaham. Grasa Om Swaha. Abhayam Abhayam Abhutanam. Abhayam Abhayam Abhutam. Yes, Atmani Bhutam Om Shram. So, Abhayam Abhayam. Prahlad Maharaj is praying. He said, "Oh Lord, please make us fearless in the struggle for existence in this material world." So this is the important thing, that it's a struggle. And this material world is described to be an ocean of misery, an ocean of tears. Sometimes it's described like that. An entire ocean of tears. So that's the bad news. The good news is that that ocean of tears are surrounded by miles of smiles. Some of our acharyas describe like that. That this ocean of tears is surrounded by miles of smiles. So beyond this, there is so much great opportunity that's available to us. We just have to recognize and accept it. So even if one goes to places like Vrindavan or certain other places, we will see that there aren't a whole lot of opportunities for material life. Like I was shocked when I heard that Russians go over to Vrindavan to make money because things are so bad there. And when you go to Vrindavan, there's hardly any opportunities. But all the opportunities that are there are for spiritual life, Krishna consciousness. And even in Alachua is described to be like a sleeping town. The only opportunity that's here, the only thing that makes Alachua important is Krishna consciousness, pretty much. That's why devotees are moving here. Just because there's an opportunity, but although that there is a struggle, like income is very difficult here. Some people would cut their income just to be here, some decide otherwise. So it's not famous, but it's important because of the presence of something that's very valuable. And Krishna promises that if one stays in these valuable places and foster their Krishna consciousness, they can return home back to Godhead. So this is the opportunity that we're having in these places. That Srila Prabhupada, this vitalizing force, actually brought. He gave us everything. He gave us the guidance, plus he gave all these holy places. He brought it right and dropped it right onto our laps. What more can we expect? He brought everything here. All we have to do is to accept or be a part of it. Like Srila Prabhupada says, all you have to do is to stay. He says, don't leave, just leave here. So the devotees had a hard time understanding his accent. So Srila Prabhupada is saying, don't leave and go away, but leave here, so live here, just stay. It's something like when devotees are living in an ashram, the temple. Of course, here it's a farm and devotees are living far away. Sometimes I don't see devotees in a whole year and they're living right on the farm. But generally in a temple atmosphere, devotees are living in a temple and the only thing they have to do to foster their Krishna consciousness is that determination to stay in that temple. Because everything flows from there. That one gets, the shell blows, Mangalarti, automatically wakes you up. The arti is going on, you're there, everyone is getting up. So you don't really have to make effort. The only effort you have to make is to stay in that atmosphere. So that is our only difficulty right now, to stay in this atmosphere of the association of devotees and accept the guidance. And in so doing, there may be challenges, there may be difficulties, no doubt about it. Like one time one sannyasi said, Bhakti Purushottam Maharaj to be precise, in one of his classes he says that he's convinced that in today's situation, if one stays in the temple atmosphere, he's bound to return back home, back to Godhead. Because it's so difficult even to stay in the temples these days. But if one can take that austerity, then he's bound to return back home, back to Godhead. So all one has to do is to stay. That's all is required of us. And to tolerate the few difficulties here and there. Like lately, Srila Prabhupada, in one of his talk, one devotee asked him, he said, Srila Prabhupada, we're practicing Krishna consciousness, and then we're getting so much suffering, like our bodies with illness and so forth, that why is Krishna doing that to us who are making so much sacrifice to serve him? And Srila Prabhupada said, Krishna is independent. He said Krishna can do whatever he wants. He's totally independent. He doesn't have to think, well, okay, this person is like this, therefore I favor him in that way. No, he doesn't have to do that. He's fully independent. He can do whatever. Therefore, in Lord Chaitanya's prayer, Shikshashtika, the last one, what is that? Asli Sava Padam Panastu Mam, Adarshram Mam Harmahatam Karotuva. Anyway, Srila Prabhupada, it's saying that Radharani is praying that Krishna can treat her rough by not being present before her, or he can warmly embrace her. Whatever the case may be, he's always her worshipful Lord. So that's our position as devotee. That's what Srila Prabhupada is saying, that whatever Krishna wants to do, it's okay. But we should always see in a favorable way of always recognizing him as our worshipful Lord. And in that way, we have nothing to worry about. Just like a child, an innocent child, they're not conscious that their parents might be rich or poor when they're small, or that they might be demoniac or might be a criminal or whatever. All they know is that they love their parents, and that reciprocation is there. That's all that matters. Similarly with us in Krishna consciousness, all that matters is that we develop our love for the Lord through the medium of the spiritual master. And everything else doesn't matter from therefore. Whether we're being neglected, whether we're being treated harshly or being treated warmly, it doesn't matter. What matters is what we put forward. So I would stop here with those points. If anyone has any questions or comments, you can take Mother Sri Devi. It's on. Yes.
But it's just difficult to
It's
take
not.
it out.
Yeah. The microphone is not on. Yeah. But anyway, I can hear you. Yes. Yeah. Can you? Yeah. Yeah. You can continue. Okay.
So
Yeah.
you're saying that there is devotional service in the higher planets, but because there is so much enjoyment, it's difficult to take it out.
Yes. According to scripture, even and Srila Prabhupada describes, if you go to Bhagavad Gita 9:20 and 21, and also 8:16, Srila Prabhupada gave elaborate explanations on that, in those three verses. That because of so much enjoyment, then you can easily get distracted. You can very easily get distracted. Even we sometimes, we're so strong in Krishna consciousness, and then somebody takes you to Disney. You know, yeah, you can get so easily distracted, and thinking of all these fancies and all these phantasmagoria that you see there, that it's reality, and you can just be in this bubble. So you can get distracted. So it's like that. So the planets are like that. So therefore, the demigods are very, very, uh, in a sense, envious of the people on the earthly planet. That they want to be here, they want to come here. Actually, one time, Japadak Maharaj was chastising his sannyas disciple. When they have all the big festivals in Mayapur, party, and even all the demigods are coming here and performing Sankirtan. So I'm going to see the Sankirtan festival. So that's the pleasure here. Does that answer? Yeah, okay. So is there anything else? So anyway, I guess we can. Oh, yeah, you can read it. Yes.
Do the inhabitants of the heavenly planets perceive their days as very long, or is it relative to their lifespan?
Yeah, it's relative to their lifespan, from my understanding. Yeah. Just like we see the ants running around, or the little bugs, their lifespan is only probably a couple of weeks or a couple of days, few days. But within that time, they carry on their entire life. They, they were born, they grow up, they become mature, they produce offsprings, they get old and they die. All within maybe sometimes within a matter of hours of our time, or days or months. But for them, they're not conscious that they're only living for a few hours or a few days. Similarly, they're not conscious that we are living for such a long time, and we are not conscious of that. So the demigods are the same, that when they're living their lives, it's relative to them. They're not conscious that, okay, I have lived one day here, that I have already lived 6 months of earthly calculation. They're not really conscious of that. But only if one goes and come back, then they can see the difference, like in Maharaj Indrajumna. You must have known the story of Maharaj Indrajumna. When he invited the Jagannath deities, when he was instructed to create these deities. So then he wanted to ask Lord Brahma to install these deities. So he went to Brahmalok. And when he went and came back, no one knew him. Who are you? He said, I am Indrajumna. I'm the monarch. I'm the emperor of this earth planet. He said, you? Who are you? You know. We are the monarchs now. You have no value here. You have, who are you? And he's saying, yes, I had the deities. I went to Lord Brahma. He said, oh, you know, eons have passed, hundreds and thousands and probably millions of years. Such a long time has passed. And we went to Lord Brahma and to invite him to come back. But when he went there, then he got adopted to those years and time. That he wasn't conscious that so many, for him, he probably just went for a day or two. But in that time, as it says, one day of Brahma is how much? 4 billion, 300 million years or something like that. Yes, so such a long time, but it's kind of a relative to your situation. You're not conscious of another situation. Okay, so anything else about it? So, anyway, thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki